Every year, thousands of human remains are found in the United States, and in one of every 4 instances, authorities can't identify the body. That's starting to change. I'm Dave Killen, co-host of The Unidentifieds, a new limited series podcast from The Oregonian and Oregon Live. We go deep into several cold cases and explain the science that's helping experts give these long-forgotten people their names back. Look for The Unidentifieds after you've finished listening to this podcast. Subscribe to The Unidentifieds on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politi and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lanny. Let's start shopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rant. Politi, Fonseca, Lanny, we're all here. Spring game edition of the Rutgers Rant. Not a lovely day in Piscataway, to say the least. Get to the stadium, it was raining sideways. That's not going to stop the spring game in these days when it is a 2-hour infomercial for Rutgers football. And apparently that was pulled off pretty well. BTN did a nice job of the coverage from what everybody told me. A lot of special guest stars, Brian Leonard, Kenny Britt, just a fun time watching Coquise Washington catch a punt at halftime. So the usual fun from the spring game was there. But I want to start here, fellas, because I don't want to forget this. I don't want to miss this. For me, the best story of the spring game was seeing Reggie Sutton get back on the field. And I wasn't there the day he got hurt in September 2021. It was a couple days before they played Michigan. But, you know, hearing stories from people who were there, just how gruesome an injury that was, needing an ambulance to get him to the hospital. You know, just to have him out there for about 20 snaps, apparently, and just to see his smile afterward. He was just obviously in really good spirits. This is a player that, you know, if you're around this team, you know that guys really like a lot, Brian. And I think that's just a nice moment for this team, right? To have that in the spring camp. No matter what happens from here with him, it was great to see him back.
Yeah, it was a great moment. I think, as Reggie and Greg mentioned a few times this spring, that a lot of people weren't sure he'd ever come back, get on the field in a game setting. Obviously, it's a spring game, so it's a little different. But still, Evan Simon, when I brought it up to him, he mentioned that Reggie got back to practice a couple weeks ago. And when he did, the entire team, it felt, a bit of an emotional lift to kind of just see him out there after years of him rehabbing on the side, after years, as you described in your column, of him screaming during rehab sessions in the Hale Center. It's a great moment for everybody around the program to see that. The people that were there, I remember Evan Simon telling me that he was there that day on September 2021 when, just a freak accident that turned a kid that was, as Greg Schiano said, their best lineman at the time, and who could probably, if he gets back to what he used to be, would be their best lineman now. Just kind of stole 2 years of his career from him. We don't know if this means he'll play in the fall. I still think there's a decent amount he has to overcome to be able to play in an actual game setting. But you do this journey is through baby steps, and he took a pretty big step this weekend to get on the field. And I think it's a story that you did really well in highlighting, and it shouldn't go without being noticed through spring ball.
Yeah, and two things too, Pat, that came to mind, and I like the fact that he won the Frank R. Burns Award. Schiano bringing back these awards that Chris Ash got rid of for no reason, that ties this to the past of the football program. Big standing ovation when he got that. That's important for one, and he told me in a moment that he needed not just physical therapy, but psychotherapy to go through this, to get over the mental roadblocks of playing football again. The kid went through a lot, I guess, is the bottom line. It's
an unbelievable story, and one that is like Brian says, uplifting, is going to make the season special. But you're right, like, to go through something that devastating and to work your way back. Schiano talked about how much rehab and how much everything and how much hard work he's put in to get back to this point. So hats off to a really outstanding kid, and for persevering through it all. Like you said, mental and physical toughness.
All right, let's talk about the actual game, because there is, and it's tough. It's tough to break down. It was just a lot of guys who were important to the defense. Certainly anybody really who was important to the defense didn't play. Offensively, I think if you were to look at the players who might be two of the three best receivers didn't play. Your star running back didn't play. Your offensive lineman didn't play. Sorry, all of that. It was raining. It was a vanilla offense. Let's put 1,000 asterisks on this before we begin this discussion about how the quarterbacks did not look great. And I guess there's really no way, if you're just assessing what you saw in that game, and that's what you saw. I just, like, if you were hoping to turn around and go, oh wow, look at that. You didn't see it, I guess. I don't know. I mean, what was your takeaway overall about that? Am I exaggerating this, guys?
I didn't think you were ever going to see anyone just come out and light it up right out of the gate anyway. I think the nature of spring ball is to hide stuff and not give away too much. Right. But you're right. It was meh. It was meh. That's the best way to describe it. Like, just very vanilla, and you got nothing out of it. And Greg wasn't saying anything about the offense, so I don't know what you could possibly take away from that game.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't feel bad about meh if the meh was like long throws were inaccurate still. They're just not hitting targets. They just don't look like they've got a feel for the offense. I get the offense changed. I get it. You know, the best throw was by the other Gavin. I mean, like, he had a bullet, the walk on had a bullet to Gavin Rupp into the end zone. I was like, well, gee, that's a nice throw. I don't know. Brian, talk me off the ledge here. Is it something you got to be worried about it? You can't, after what happened last season, you got the same two guys. If they don't take a noticeable step up before the first game, I mean, it's a thing.
Yeah, and I think the rain might have been the saving grace of this team for the spring game, because now they have a built-in excuse of why everything was kind of chaotic, right? Because if they have this kind of performance on a sunny spring day, then the alarm bells really go off. So I think the rain kind of helped out a bit. I think there's not much to take out of it. I agree. The missed throws from Wimsatt were a bit, alarming, just because they're similar to last year. I mean, I think he missed Christian Dremel by about 5 yards on a short route on one play. And Evan Simon got a bit unlucky that 3 or 4 of his throws hit the receivers in the hands and they just slipped out. Again, I don't know if that's the rain. I don't know if that's because the receivers, and these are, again, the backup receivers, because their top 3 receivers in the spring didn't play. It's tough to gauge, and they didn't really open up the playbook, as you guys said. The thing is, like, at Alabama, they have one bad spring game, both quarterbacks, and they go out and get the backup quarterback at Notre Dame. Rutgers has a bad spring game with their 2 quarterbacks who already struggled, and it looks like this is going to be the competition again in the training camp. So, not to say that Rutgers should compare itself to Alabama. I don't think it's time to freak out.
Saying Peyton Thorne is not coming to Piscataway.
Wow, why not? Let's start that rumor. Come on, let's get that. Let's make that happen.
I don't think a starting quarterback in the Big Ten is going to make a cross conference transfer to Rutgers when he probably had the starting spot locked up at Michigan State. So yeah, I think they're going to roll with these 2 guys.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote it in December that he needed to go out and get a transfer portal quarterback. He did not do it. And at the time I was told, well, you got enough guys in that room already. It's just like, I get it. But yeah, I mean, I think that he's rolling the dice in a major way on this. Like, if the defense can be better, he can have the offensive coordinator and Kirk Shiraka that he trusts. If we're in the same place with quarterbacks, the team's going 4-8 again. I guess that's what I come back to. And I just don't, all right, I will take all of the, I get it. I will throw all of my hands up and say the spring game doesn't matter. The receivers weren't there. Let's get Nassim Brantley out there. Let's get the kid from Irvington out there. Let's get and we'll talk about this in a minute. Let's get the next transfer portal guy that they're going to bring in out there. We'll see what happens then. But even then, if you're overthrowing guys by 3 feet, it's a problem. All right.
The way this team is going to win is going to be an elite defense running the ball about 100 times, because that's what it felt like in the spring game.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because of the rain, but I felt bad for Aaron Young, a guy who's hurt all year. They make him run 30 times into the middle of the offensive line. And then the quarterback just has to be good enough, the game manager, not turn the ball over. I think that's been a humongous emphasis in spring ball. Every time Greg has talked, it's like, we didn't turn it over. So I think if you can get a quarterback that can manage the game, complete over half of his passes, and not turn the ball over multiple times per game, then they're kind of ahead of where they were last year, which, if you think about it, is a step in the right direction.
There's a great moment in the post game. I can't imagine that many of you watch the post game with when Pat asks Schiano about, so is this what we're going to see from a Chirac offense? And he's like, I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I was like, I don't know. Like, no secret is going to be revealed here about it. But it was certainly very run heavy, a run oriented read option kind of attack. We saw that last year in Minnesota. That's what you're going to get. They don't want to turn the ball over. They want to control the clock. I get the whole thing, right? And that's what we saw.
Absolutely. And the no turnovers thing. What I want to go back to, the point is that Gavin Wimsatt came in as the highest regarded quarterback in the history of Rutgers football. And this is what we're going to get as a game manager whose goal is to not turn it over is unacceptable. That's the problem.
Right.
That's the problem.
Totally right. Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't think we've seen a lot of Simon already. I didn't think he was. I'm be honest. I'm a little surprised that he's still in the program. I get it. Good for him for sticking it out. I don't know that they're going to trust him in a big game. What's behind him? I guess let's look at that. We didn't. It was great that they were talking about the freshman on BTN. I mean, it was a moment that Greg's former coach was asking him on live television, "What about number 15?" We didn't see much from him.
Yeah, I wonder if that's by design to hide him, or if it's more likely they're not planning to use him at all next season. He's probably going to redshirt, and they didn't want him to get hurt in the spring. I'm not entirely sure, but it doesn't sound like he's in the competition. It really does seem like it's a 2-horse race.
Right. I agree with Brian. I think there's a lot of hype around Johnny Shepherd, but I haven't gotten any sense that he's in the competition at all either.
We should also put some perspective on this. This is a kid that decommitted from Old Dominion in November and committed to Rutgers in December. I think it's pretty reasonable that he wasn't even going to enroll early until his high school let him last second. So I think he's a kid that probably will play unless they have to, like last year, and the top 2 quarterbacks get hurt. But Greg sounded pretty upbeat about him when I asked him after the second scrimmage. So maybe a future prospect, but I would not expect to see him this year.
So we're back at the spot where this is real. And this is why Greg's paying Kirk Chirac $1.4 million to build an offense that will hide this team's problems. And I think that's something he's going to have to figure out. And it's hard to hide a quarterback that's inaccurate, that you don't trust to throw the ball. So we're going to see what he comes up with. He's got 4 months to do it, and a full summer before, of course. And this is the problem. The most important game is the first game. There's no season that goes well if you lose to Northwestern in the opener. So there's a lot of pressure on to get that done in the summer. All right. So one thing that came out of this, and I thought it was fascinating that again, Greg Schiano is usually pretty tight with the information, as you guys are acutely aware of, to come out and just kind of say on live television again that they're still in the portal looking for players. Wide receiver and safety are the positions. I mean, what do you think is going to happen here? Are they what are we to see as far as adding people? This roster's not a finished product.
So Greg was on the Big Ten Network on Thursday, and he said that they were going to try to add 1, maybe 2 wide receivers out of the portal. So that's clearly the priority there. And then the other positions you could kind of, again, Greg was very secretive and said it was private to kind of what they're pursuing. I think you could kind of put the pieces together and figure out they could really use a tight end because that room struggled a lot last year and they haven't added anybody. They could use, as you said, a safety. They probably have their 2 starting safeties now, but if they find someone talented that they could add to the room, I think they would take that. And an offensive tackle, because you lose JD DiRenzo, you lose Willie Tyler. You could probably use some depth there, and that unit was pretty thin already last year. So that's a lot of bodies to add, and at a point in the portal where we're in the second window. You could saw at Michigan State they lost 3 starters yesterday, but that's probably the exception, not the rule. Most guys that are very talented and entering the portal probably already have entered. So you're kind of going to a shallow pool of talent, but they need bodies. So we'll see. I would be very surprised if they didn't add at least 1 wide receiver. I wouldn't be surprised if they added 2. And I kind of think at least one of those other positions, they bolster them. But without a doubt, they do need upgrades.
All right. So that would leave you right now receivers. So Nassim Brantley, Western Illinois transfer, injured his ankle at the end of last year. He'd be back. I've been told he'll be healthy for the opener for the camp. That's important. Fama Toure from Irvington, really high on this kid. I think I saw him in his Letterman jacket at the game, so that's a good sign that he's around. Receiver wise, Pat, I mean, what else are we looking at this? They raved about Isaiah Washington for the third straight spring. Essentially, he had a great job. I guess Christian Dremel, wasn't he the most improved player? I mean, give me a sense give me a sense of what we got receiver wise.
Yeah, and then you also had Max Patterson, who caught the 2 touchdown passes in the game. Christian Dremel, you talked about, and then Rashad Rochelle is a guy who's had a lot of hype in the spring because he can do a lot of different things. He can run the ball. He can, you saw him last year run the Wildcat. He's probably going to be a slot guy. So those are 3 names. And yeah, I think they're kind of high on Nassim Brantley because if you remember, everyone says, oh, he's a deep, FCS guy. He hasn't played in the big time yet, but he had a pretty good game against Minnesota. He had a couple catches for like 50 something yards against Minnesota when Western Illinois played Minnesota. So he's got the size, he got huge hands. And I think that he's probably going to be the number 1 receiver.
I mean, but and the one position group they are the most comfortable with is running back. And again, we didn't see Sam Brown. We saw Aaron Young, who looked really good. I think they've got a lot of depth there, and I think they've got some youth coming in there too. So if this is a run first team, Brian, this is going to be, they're comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think they're very happy that Aaron Young is healthy again. I think he could really add a lot to that room. Sam Brown, obviously, we saw what we saw last year out of him. I do think it's probably best to pull back expectations, not because of anything that happened with Sam, not because of his injury, but if you really think about it, he had one big game against Indiana, right? And he had flashes before that. I think it'd be unfair to the kid, and I think we've done this a lot throughout the offseason, to kind of hail him as, I don't know, Mo Ibrahim or like this savior running back that can, transform the offense. I mean, he's proven that he's a good running back. He's full of potential. I just don't know if we should. It was not fair to the kid to treat him as Barry Sanders, right? But yes, he has a chance of being one of the better running backs in the Big Ten. And then you add guys depth wise. I mean, Kyle Monunga is a great guy at the depth piece. You have Jayshon Benjamin, a freshman who had showed a little bit in the spring game. And there's another guy who I can't even
the shifty running back,
Al-Shadi Salam.
Al-Shadi Salam. There you go. So just to show how deep that room goes. I can't even remember the 4th guy. So, I think that's going to be their position of strength. And if they're going to have any success offensively, they're going to have to run the ball very well.
All right, let's shift to basketball really quick before we do some insider questions. The news that I guess everyone was expecting, Bey Ndongo decommits from the basketball program, opening up his recruitment. It puts Steve Pikiell in an interesting position, Brian, in that, if Cliff Omori stays in the draft or goes to play in Europe, which is a possibility, who's centering? You're centering this team. Like, who's set? Like, you've already lost your backup center is playing for Hartford now. I mean, this is an interesting. I'm sorry for Charlotte now. This is an interesting situation with the depth in the front court.
Yeah, the Bey Ndongo thing I think was kind of just bubbling under the surface for a while, and by the time he decommitted, it was a bit of a formality. I think the Rutgers staff knew what was coming. It sounds like Carl Hobbs and Georgia Tech are leaders for him, which would make sense because Carl Hobbs was his main recruiter at Rutgers. I don't know if Carl Hobbs leaving is the reason why he decommitted from Rutgers. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it looks like he's headed to Georgia Tech. Or I should say, I would not be surprised if he goes to Georgia Tech. They're doing a dance right now. I mean, they've kind of done this dance the last couple of years with guys that are in the draft. They're weighing it out with Cliff. They're going to save a scholarship for him. And my understanding still is that Cliff is going to run the whole race, and he has until May 31st, so he has another 30 days. And they're going to wait it out. I'm sure they're in constant communication, and they all have an idea of kind of where he's leaning there. I would still expect Cliff to be back next year, because if he's not, they're in very, very deep trouble at the center position. I think, when you're trying to, reinforce against that, you're talking to kids in the portal that you could add, and their first question is always going to be, what's Cliff going to do? What's the minute situation going to be? So, and you can't tell the kid either way until Cliff decides. So they're in a bit of a pickle. So I don't know what the solution is. I do think they need to add at least one more body, regardless of what Cliff does, just to replace whatever Bey Ndongo would be, whether that's the backup big, whether that's a backup 4, whether that's the third big. And they'll probably have to do that through the portal. It's probably way too late to add a high school kid. So we'll see that the roster is very much in flux. They're still trying to add a third assistant to replace Carl Hobbs, which that process will probably till run past Memorial Day as well. I think a lot of the pieces, there's a lot of moving pieces here, and I'm not quite sure where everything will fall. But it's Steve Pikiell is not in an enviable position, that's for sure.
Right. They did get some good news. Andre Hyde coming back for another year. He's just a glue guy who certainly has helped play many different positions and sort of underrated piece for that team. Are we worried yet, or is it still too early to be worried?
I wouldn't be worried necessarily. I guess it depends on what your expectations are. Like if this is a program that now has to make the NCAA tournament every year, I'm not sure this is an NCAA tournament team right now. But if you get Cliff back, if you get Paul back, which I would also expect, and you Bandongo decommitting is going to be the reason they don't make the NCAA tournament, right? I don't think it's time to worry just yet. And I think that the comfort here is that if they do have a tough season in 23-24, I'm not saying they will, I'm just saying if they do, right around the corner is the 24-25 season where you have Ace Bailey, a top 10 kid. You may have Dylan Harper. You have a second-year Gavin Griffiths. There's a lot to be looking forward to as a Rutgers fan. That would soften the blow of any tough season, but no, I would not panic just yet.
All right. Dive into some insider questions. We've got a lot of them. Of the 30 questions we've got, 28 of them are on the same topic, but that's okay. We know what you want to talk about. We're all about that. So thanks for subscribing. Thanks for participating in our podcast. But first one, any chance Rutgers takes a quarterback transfer out of the portal? Are you confident in Wimsatt or Simon if Wimsatt gets hurt? So this is the theme of all of them. Pat, it used to be that the most popular player in any college football program was the backup quarterback. Now the most popular player is a quarterback who's not even on campus. I think the answer is no. I think it's too late. I think there's nobody in there who they could bring in who would come in at this point knowing that he would be essentially a backup quarterback. I just don't think that's going to happen. Do you agree?
I agree. And I think they're the whole, as we talked about, Kirk Shiraka developing Gavin Wimsatt and Evan Simon, that's been the goal from day one. So if you're going to bring in another guy to challenge them, I don't think it makes sense. I think they have a legitimate competition. That's putting the pressure on Gavin to keep his job. So I don't think there's a quarterback out there that Rutgers is going to get.
All right, Peter from Palm City, Florida. The arm strength of Wimsatt versus Simon isn't even close. Accuracy about the same. Wimsatt is the better athlete by far. Why is this a close competition? That sounds like Schiano speak. What am I missing? I think it might just be as simple as the fact that Wimsatt hasn't pulled away. I mean, that could be the answer. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. Greg had a comment in his press conference that said when they sit down with Kirk Shiraka and the staff are going to sit down in a couple of weeks to kind of digest the spring ball and discuss the situation. And it sounded like he said, I don't have let me pull up the exact quote. It was something like, we will know pretty quick here the pecking order. So it sounds like they know which way they're leaning. I wouldn't expect them to publicly announce which way they're leaning anytime soon. I agree in the sense that Wimsatt is the more athletic quarterback. He didn't run it much at all on Saturday, and Simon ran it about 4 or 5 times. Again, is that them hiding something? Is that just the way the game flowed? I don't know. But I agree. And I think I would say that what the staff knows privately is not necessarily what they say publicly. So right. I think they know which way they're leaning.
If it was a legitimate 1 versus 2 horse race here, why did Gavin start the last 5 games of the season while Simon on the bench, right? Like Simon has to come out and just overwhelmingly be the stud quarterback to take the job away. So I think it's always been a behind the closed doors. They know that Gavin's the guy.
Right. I agree with that totally. You both make a great point. But until he says otherwise, we'll have to go along with it that it's a competition. All right. So another question with quarterbacks. Optimism in your overall team is a good thing, but in the key player on that team is a question mark, and not up to the level of Big Ten signal caller. The season will be another disappointment, and goes right down to this: is Schiano confident in Shepard if one of the others go down? We're back to Johnny Shepard. I mean, I don't know. You mentioned it before, Brian. Just the kid coming out of Old Dominion. It's hard to put a lot of. I mean, decommitting from Old Dominion, it's hard to put a lot of stock into him as a freshman. I think it's got to be one of these two guys.
Yeah. I don't think you could depend on a Johnny Shepard to come in as a true freshman. I mean, we saw what Gavin Wimsatt was as a true freshman, as this highly touted quarterback. To expect a Johnny Shepard to be better than he is now is just not realistic.
All right, punting question. How about this? Hey guys, I'm curious to know if your thoughts on life after Corsack. Who's going to be the punter this year? How much confidence does the team have in him? And does Corsack increase the level of punting recruits Rutgers is getting? So this is funny. It's great. This is a Corsack handpicked this punter who punts like him, looks like him. I mean, give me the punting breakdown, Pat. What are we looking at this year in post Corsack world?
Well, you hit on it. Flynn Appleby was actually pretty famous in Australian football. That's one thing that people should know. Like, he's was a legitimate professional, good player in Australia. And Adam Corsack was his mentor and kind of brought him over. But I don't know. I haven't seen what we saw in the spring game. I can't say I was watching the punting all that much, but I think it's going to be tough. Life after Corsack's going to be tough. It's not going to be the same. I think Flynn Appleby's going to be a good punter, but he's not going to be Corsack good.
Yeah, how could you be Corsack good? Corsack was one of the best in the country for me. It's just he's not irreplaceable, but it's certainly at that level. It's going to be hard to replace. I'm a little surprised. Have I missed it? Has Adam Corsack caught on anywhere yet, NFL wise?
He has not, as far as I've seen.
What is going on there? We have any? I was not surprised that he wasn't drafted. Not anything against him. It's just that punters, it's not all that common for punters to get drafted. But I am a little surprised he's not with a team yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the style of punting is a factor here. I know he said he worked on NFL style punts and he showed it at the combine. But it's tough to watch a guy Australian style kick for 5 years and think he can do it in the NFL at a job that's already there's only 32 starting punting jobs. It's a very high risk position. I thought what was interesting is that the Patriots took Michigan State's punter over Adam Corsack. I thought that was a bit of a betrayal, and I thought I was
betrayal.
It's a betrayal of Bill Belichick loves Rutgers guys, and now you have the greatest punter in program history, and you take another Big Ten punter. I thought that was a betrayal, and I was surprised Greg Schiano didn't grab the podium and throw it in disgust over that. But yeah, I think. I would have to think he'll get a rookie minicamp tryout somewhere or something, right? I just can't imagine his NFL journey is over before it starts. But I can't say I'm shocked that he didn't get drafted.
Yeah, it seems like he will land at a camp somewhere. All right, let's break down. We should have done this earlier, but one Scarlet Knight drafted, a bunch of Scarlet Knights landing on teams. Just give me the breakdown of the basic numbers here for Knights in the NFL.
So Christian Broswell got drafted in the 6th round by Jacksonville. I don't think it's a surprise that he got drafted. I was a bit surprised he got drafted as high as he did, 202nd, higher than Isaiah Pacheco and Bo Melton both last year. But I think he had impressed scouts during the draft process, and a couple of teams really liked him. According to our friend Bobby Darin at 247 Sports, he had reported that a couple times, and he was right on the money. He told people to watch out for Christian Broswell, and he nailed it. And then guys that got UDFAs, Avery Young was the first. He signed with San Francisco. Sean Ryan signed with Baltimore. Aaron Cruikshank signed with Chicago. MyJ signed with Seattle, and Christian Izien signed with Tampa Bay. So really spread out throughout the entire country, throughout the NFL. I think a couple of these guys probably have good chances of making rosters. I think Christian Izien was a guy we thought could get drafted. I think he has a chance. They're in good positions to make rosters. Right. And I think that after watching what Isaiah Pacheco and Bo Melton were able to do last year, it's encouraging.
All right, a couple quick basketball questions, and then we'll wrap it up. This is a good one. How about Coach Washington? Someone noticed Coach Washington catching the ball. It's great stuff. She catches a punt at the spring game and lands another one. Lands another former highly rated transfer. What are the needs for the women's basketball team, and are they attainable? Pat, I mean, were you impressed with her ball hawking ability there in the rain?
Absolutely. Got the personal coaching from Kenny Britt.
You see the clip? It's great. There's a clip where like she says, "I got no coaching at all from you." she shuts him down. All you've told me is just catch the ball. It was great. It was very funny on social media.
Here's a Rutgers insider exclusive. The day before, actually 2 days before, on Thursday, she was taking punts from Adam Korsak in the stadium for preparation. Hokies Washington.
Wow.
So I was there working on a post practice article, and I saw
stuff you'll only hear here. She was not leaving it up to chance.
No, she trained for this. That's all you need to know about Coach Washington. I think she's thorough. She's doing a great job, and in terms of the specific needs of the team, I think they're pulling in, like you said, another great transfer to go along with Destiny Adams. They have the big scorer from last year, so I think they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, they need a little bit of everything. Depth. Obviously, there was not much left in that program. But I will say this, and it comes back to like the synergy in the athletic department. This I get it. C. Vivian Stringer was a different type of coach, Hall of Famer, someone who wasn't gonna do this stuff. And I think it's kind of cool now that you've got more of a synergy with that program. It's been folded back into the athletic department. In a way. So we'll see what happens if she's got, if she can turn it around, if the team takes a step next year, that's a good thing. All right. Some men's basketball. Brian, someone wants to know, is Papa Conte still a real possibility? I think the answer to that is no, but you did a nice breakdown of how the recruits did during the spring. Tell us about that.
I would be surprised if Papa Conte landed at Rutgers. Got a lot of SEC schools around him. I think we mentioned this on the last pod. Nate Oates of Alabama went to go see him in person a couple of days after he got out of his NLI at Michigan. So I would be a bit surprised. I'd be really surprised actually if Papa Conte ended up at Rutgers. The commits and targets, I've been kind of tracking how they do at the Nike EYBL, which is the biggest AAU tournament on the circuit. Rutgers target Dylan Harper, as one could expect, a pretty big individual. Couple weekends, he's averaging something like 18 points per game. He's shooting 50%. He's leading his team. His team is struggling, surprisingly. The Wrens, they were probably one of the better teams in that group, and they're struggling. They're 2-6. But Dylan Harper's having incredible individual performances. Lathan Somerville, the recent Rutgers commit, had a huge game against Dylan Harper's team, something like 14 points. Delquan Warren is getting steals all over the place, so he's really fitting that Steve Peichel defensive guard. And Ace Bailey plays not on the EYBL. He plays on like some different independent circuit, so I don't have stats on him. But it seems like every weekend he has some sort of highlight dunk or block or some crazy play going on. So I don't know how many points he's scoring, but I do know he looks pretty good on the court. So, and
we have no new news because we get asked this every week. We have no new news on Dylan Harper. It's still the same. Very good chance of getting him, but nothing has changed, right?
As far as I know, same old.
All right. Thanks for the questions, everyone. Good stuff. As always, hope we give you as much as we can give you on football without getting in Coach Schiano's doghouse. All right. What other sports? We done? We had lacrosse season over. Baseball season still going. What can you tell me?
Men's lax is done. They lost in the Big Ten tournament, and they're probably not going to get in a large bid. Women's lax is probably done. They've lost in the Big Ten tournament as well.
Don't like 64 teams get into the women's lax tournament? They're going to get at large, really?
Yeah, I would be, because I think you have to be 500. I think they lost in the semifinals, and that prevents them from being 500. And baseball's still going on, and softball as well. I think both of them are still kind of in the hunt. There's still some decent amount of season left.
Excellent. Any other wrestling news? Wrestling transfers?
Wrestling news, they got another transfer, Jacob Butler, middleweight. So they added some depth there, potential starter. And the big Chris Cannon was a target. He committed to Michigan yesterday, so you can cross that one off. He was a hopeful for Rutgers, two-time All-American, went to Michigan. And then the big fish out there is still Shane Griffith, the national champion from Stanford, who told me that Rutgers is a potential, and I'll be in touch with him up until he makes his decision and have an update with Shane Griffith at some point soon.
Breaking news coming soon. All right, gents, anything I'm forgetting? Anything last thoughts here? I don't know. When's our next podcast going to be?
Who knows? Whenever you want to see us again.
Right. Yeah, you were not. I forgot to mention this. You guys were salty about me being there. Like at one point, Lanny says to me, "Looks, I forget. I think I was judging you harshly because you didn't give me a good list of players who weren't in the game."
Yes.
Which
I forgot the entire defense didn't play. All right, I'm sorry.
And then you said, "Go back to your Devils game, Politi." Like, wow, my goodness, just shot me. It pushed me right out of the press box.
I mean,
I thought it was going to be
more important, Devils game 6 or the Rutgers spring game.
Well, yes, both. We did both, which was fun.
That was incredible. An incredible doubleheader, Steve. You got to give yourself a pat on the back. I mean, this guy, for you guys that out there that don't know, this guy shows up in the spring game, pouring rain. He has shoe covers for when he goes out to walk across the field. He puts shoe covers over his sneakers so they don't get wet. Then
only because
Sea Caucus.
I couldn't sit. You go to a hockey game, you can't have wet shoes. It would be a miserable 4. And those games can last, as hockey fans know, they could last until like 2 a.m. and like 60 degrees. You get pneumonia in there. I had to be dry.
Shoe covers.
Yes, they weren't stylish. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. Wasn't the best look that I've ever had, but you gotta make do here. Game 7 tonight. I don't know what to expect. It's like this is just a wild playoff, guys. I mean, you've already seen Colorado go out defending champs. Boston had the best regular season in many, many, many years. The NHL is gone. I mean, if the Devils win this one, it could be I joke that the ice groundhog sees his shadow 6 more weeks of hockey, but we'll see what happens tonight. It'll be fun.
The Devils were playing on Saturday like they were in the spring game too, just for the record.
Yes. Good one.
Devils in 7. I think Devils win tonight.
Devils in 7. Pat, what's your pick?
Let's go. Devils jersey.
Devils in 7. Devils in 7. All right, I'm going to go with the Rangers in overtime. Double overtime. But find a 2-syllable. Howie Rose call a 2-syllable name to call out. Got to be like Mattel. Who's going to be? Will fit into that. Kreider. No, it doesn't rhyme the same. But we'll see what happens.
Zibanejad.
Zibanejad. No, it doesn't work either. All right, fellas. Thanks for this. Good job. Good job to all of our texters. Thank you to Devco, of course. We appreciate it. We'll be back soon to talk some more Rutgers sports.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.